Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Really glad to have this man back. Friend of mine, District 1 Republican, great state of Florida. It's Matt Gaetz. Matt, how are you? Good to talk to you.
Oh, great to be back with you, Pags.
So X is going nuts. I don't think X should be called X anymore. I think it should be called argue. I think you just go on there and argue with everybody and debate everybody and call everybody names. I think that's what we do, right?
Yeah, I tell you what, it is engaging, but you and I love it. We knock it, but we're kind of into it. So
well, we are, because I mean it's more of a free speech platform than it used to be, but it gives a bunch of anonymous idiots the free reign to say anything they want about anybody. But if we deal with it in the right mentality, I think we're okay. Here we are. We're getting close to an election again, Matt, and it turns out Matt Gaetz is under investigation. Some witness says you paid for sex. Matt, you out there paying for sex?
No, that is totally false. It's been false for the last 4 years, I guess, while people have been trying to smear me. Look, this is the work of Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy handpicked every Republican currently on the ethics committee. They didn't go through any normal steering committee process. And it's part of this revenge tour that hasn't really played out well. Nancy Mace dog-walked Kevin McCarthy in a South Carolina race.
Right.
It seems to be a draw in Virginia with Bob Good and McGuire, with us maybe not knowing the real result there for days or weeks. And in my case, Kevin McCarthy knows that he can't beat me at the ballot box, and so they're trying to use these other tools to smear an effective conservative. But the good thing about the way I serve my district, I know who my bosses are, and they're the people in Florida, and they seem to be pretty happy with the service they're getting.
Well, you're a guy who seems to be tireless. I mean, you're nonstop out here camping. You're in San Antonio several times. You're flying around the country trying to give support to real conservatives. And every 2 years, the same stupid narrative comes up. And it's not just about you, Matt. I mean, now we've got Donald Trump said the N-word on The Apprentice again. We have video and audio, and of course, they have no video. They have no audio. This is the same thing they said in 2016 that just wasn't true. Mark Burnett, the guy who executive produces the show, said, we have no such tape. I don't know what they're talking about. And then Trump said very nice people on both sides. And he loves white supremacists, which he never said. He said he thought there were fine people on both sides of the argument about statues. So do you have to react to it constantly, Matt? You know they're going to do it again. They have no proof of it, but they're going to keep on doing it, no matter how great your relationship is with Ginger, no matter how much you have denied this and the ethics committee before cleared you of it, you still have people saying it.
Yeah, this is the nature of politics these days, and it's because a lot of the folks don't want to have a fair argument with people like Trump or me about our ideas, the way to get the economy going, the way to seal the border. And so it's this personal destruction, it's this lawfare. And when they do something to Trump, I always know I'm going to get some version of it. He always, of course, carries the biggest burden and takes on the toughest attacks.
Right.
But all of us that are in MAGA, at some form or another, whether you're just a keyboard warrior who ends up in Facebook jail, whether you've got bad folks in the media telling lies about you, or in President Trump's case, you actually have prosecutors trying to throw you in jail. This is the nature of the combat, and I think we resist that and plow through it by winning elections, inspiring the country, and continuing to force a focus on our lived experience.
Yeah.
The lived experience in America right now is way worse than it was 4 years ago. And they're going to do anything possible to distract you from that.
Follow him everywhere, at Matt Gaetz or at Rep. Matt Gaetz. He's a District 1 Republican, great state of Florida, Matt Gaetz. We had the Cassidy What's-Her-Face, talking about how Donald Trump at 70-something overpowered 3 Secret Service agents and was taking control of the SUV. We know that's not true. It's verifiably untrue. The Secret Service said it was untrue. Yet, Matt, they keep on planting stories like this. Is it because they believe those who already hate you will hate you more? Because I don't think it's going to get anybody from our side to say, well, Matt Gaetz must be a bad guy, because for the 7th time, they're bringing up unfounded claims. Why do they keep doing it, do you think?
Well, in this case, I think they did it because they had to close 4 of their investigations. There were investigations that had absolutely no merit, that were spun out of lies, and they closed those. Crazy stuff like I had taken bribes and all kind of nonsense. And in order to kind of cover their tracks for having come up empty on those matters, they try to say, oh, well, now we're expanding our review of other things. At the end of the day, the folks know who the fighters are. Yeah. And the people know they come for the fighters. And there are certain, there's a certain pride that comes with being on the target list, whether that's the target list for the Democrats, the target list for the sellout Republicans, or as you and I are on, in fact, the target list of a foreign country.
Yeah, this blows me away, and I do want to segue to that. By the way, that was a great segue. It's Matt Gaetz, District 1 Republican, great state of Florida. Again, unfounded claims. I don't know what it's going to take for Kevin McCarthy to get off of his high horse and realize that he's going to be somebody who's not completely on the left. Stop challenging people like you. But let's talk about this Ukraine list. This list is compiled. It's 300 some odd Americans, generally speaking Americans, who are on the enemies list because we dare tell the truth. We dare say, hey, where's that money going? We dare say, why are we propping up pensions in Ukraine? When we dare say, what does victory look like in Ukraine against Russia? We're now on the enemies list. Who funded this? Who even put this list together? Do you know?
The American taxpayer, Pags. Here's how you follow the money. The U.S. budget puts funds into various grant programs at the Department of State, at USAID, at a number of even the Department of Defense entities. And then you get these left-wing groups that are tied up with academicians or even foreign interests who obtain those grants to provide some service. And in this case, it was fact-checking. We're going to make sure we fact-check any information out there that could be the Russians, right? The Russian disinformation. Wow. And from those origins, you get a Ukrainian non-governmental organization, but really seeded with government money, out there saying, well, the people you need to look out for that could possibly be the sources of disinformation because they're enemies of the country of Ukraine are people like Joe Pags, Tucker Carlson, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right. Congressman Jim Banks. And, when you see this, first of all, that should never even exist from the country we're funding. But when you think about the fact that it's your dollars, that frankly, we're borrowing against future generations to pay for an enemies list to create the intellectual infrastructure for a censorship regime.
Wow.
And by the way, we're not even enemies of Ukraine.
No.
I hope Ukraine wins. I hope Russia loses.
Yes.
It's a totally different question than whether or not you want to borrow money from China to give it to Ukraine to somehow act as though that's a projection of American strength. It isn't, and you're not an enemy of Ukraine if you say so.
And you're 1,000% allowed to say it. But this goes a long way to show that Ukraine is not a fight about democracy or about a representative republic. I mean, you don't have the First Amendment anymore. Not that they had our Constitution there, but you can't freely worship. You can't freely report. You can't even have elections now because he says so. But yet somehow we're supposed to be able to say, well, this is about democracy. As we ignore Armenia, as we ignore all the democracies falling to Islamic terrorism in Africa, we care about Ukraine for some reason. Matt, is this all about relationships to the Biden family? Why do we care about Ukraine more than anybody else?
Yeah, it sure does seem that the recent reporting from John Solomon about the $120 million windfall that Hunter and Joe Biden were expecting from Burisma, that may be motivating their interest in this particular country
you think?
To some extent.
Yeah.
That said, you're right. I mean, if we're going to fight on the front lines of democracy, I'd sure like it to be a democracy that held elections, allowed a free press, and didn't persecute people in faith-based organizations.
Yes.
To me, that would be the front lines of democracy. Hardly what we're observing right now in Ukraine. And the result is a lot more death, which is something I don't want to see. I don't believe that the U.S. plowing tens of billions of dollars into this conflict has in any way reduced the length of the conflict. We've probably extended it. And the notion that we're going to fight until the last inch of Crimea is repatriated to Ukraine is insane. And I'm so looking forward to an America First foreign policy from President Trump that isn't isolationist, that isn't just despondent about the rest of the world, but that leads with a strong vision of who we are so that people want to emulate that on their own accord, not so that they can draw us into their wars and draw us into their financial problems. That's what has hollowed out the middle class in this country and driven up our debt for generations.
The one and only firebrand, it's Matt Gaetz. Go and follow him everywhere at Matt Gaetz or at Rep Matt Gaetz, District 1 Republican, great state of Florida. Let's talk about what Biden did yesterday with his 500,000 people getting amnesty. You break the law, now you can compete with Americans. You've got a path to citizenship. Does the executive authority that he has give him the ability to pick and choose 500,000 illegal aliens and tell them, I wave the wand and you're now here legally? Can you guys in Congress stop him?
The courts will. I mean, this has no constitutional footing. The way the Congress could stop Joe Biden is to stop funding the very invasion into our country. unfortunately, we've had too many Republicans willing to surrender and vote with Democrats on the funding of the border crisis and the very NGOs that are drawing people here legally. But no president has the ability with the stroke of a pen to grant citizenship. That is not among the powers that are vested in Article 2. That's an act of Congress. We decide and determine that in accordance with our constitutional norms. So this is extra constitutional. It is lawless. And I think it is cover for the fact that Joe Biden is trying to have it both ways. They're trying to slowly reinstitute some of the Trump policies on the border around the time of the election so that there aren't these images of biblical waves of people coming into America illegally. And at the same time, he's trying to virtue signal to the 10 million illegal people in this country that if he's reelected, he's going to make sure that they are able to benefit from their unlawful act at the expense of the rest of us, which is a terrible way to pit people in this country against one another. The truth of the matter is people who are not here legally have to return. We have to have a deportation with the damage caused to our fellow Americans and our economy.
It is Representative Matt Gaetz. Matt, everything you said is spot on. The question I get mostly, and you know that I'm here in San Antonio, so we're close to the border. The question I get mostly from everybody, doesn't matter what their ethnicity is or their race is or their gender, can we round them up and really send them back? Or are we stuck with 10 million that we're going to have to give some sort of path to at least residency here?
Well, I'll be honest with you. A lot of our state and local officials are already rounding them up. They're rounding them up through the normal criminal law process. And you talk to a lot of sheriffs anywhere in this country, they'll say it's so frustrating when they arrest someone, it's an illegal alien, they want to have ICE cooperate to get that person deported, and they get no cooperation from ICE, none whatsoever. And then they end up turning those illegal aliens back out onto our streets. And when the reality is they should serve their punishment and be back to their country of origin.
Yes.
And President Trump and his team will allow that cooperation to be the thrust of the largest deportation in American history. And that will ensure that it's the people breaking the law who are leaving first. Well,
he'll also allow the Border Patrol to do their jobs, which they're not allowed to do right now. It's Matt Gaetz, a firebrand. Go to gaetz.house.gov/firebrand and follow him on all the social media. I want to wrap up on the border by just asking a simple question about the impeachment of Mayorkas. Matt, did you know that the Senate could just dismiss it? I mean, I had no idea that they didn't have to do the trial. What the hell was that?
Well, they look like fools.
Yes.
And I actually think that dismissal vote on Mayorkas is going to hang around the neck of people like John Tester out there in competitive Senate primaries, as it should. And, you know, the Senate procedurally is afforded the opportunity to entertain a motion to dismiss just as at a trial. But it is, I think, disrespectful to the work of the House. And I think that it shows something more than the Democrats want an open border.
Right.
They actually are in active concealment of the facts that are leading to all American communities seeing the impact of that border invasion right on Main Street and in our hospitals and in our schools and in our jails. And so, in a way, they exposed themselves with that vote, but they did it to run cover for the bad Mayorkas Biden policies that they didn't want to see put on trial by the House.
One thing I'm glad came out that the American people didn't know, that Mayorkas was actually the architect of DACA, and DACA is allowing people to stay here illegally as well. That's how Obama did it. This guy actually came up with that plan, deferred adjudication for childhood arrivals, which just basically lets illegal aliens every 2 years re-up and stay some more by just paying a little fine. It's Matt Gaetz. I want to talk about this legislation with you and Thomas Massey. President Trump is on the campaign trail talking to middle-class Americans. People are out there working their asses off to try to make a better life for themselves, while Biden keeps talking about raising taxes. This no taxation on tips could be a game changer, Matt.
Oh, I write vote Trump, no tax on tips on every single restaurant bill that I'm involved in right now. And I got to tell you, the working class in this country have been paying more than their fair share of taxes.
Yes.
You go look at companies like Amazon, they barely pay any taxes. You go look at all the carve-outs and cutouts and incentives that you get for the big businesses, because they've got the lobbyists and they've got the corporate PACs that go and create those carve-outs in the tax code. Well, you know what we need right now in this country, Pags? Workers.
Yes.
And I want to show some respect directly to the worker. And there are a lot of people out there working for tips. I've worked for tips. I used to deliver pizza.
Me too.
And I could tell you that keeping that money in the pocket of a working class American is a lot better than sending it to Washington, D.C. to get sent around to every woke and weaponized program. Now, if we're going to do this, I think we need to not deficit spend to do it. We need to pay for it by creating greater equities in other areas of the tax code. So I want to move those incentives off of Wall Street onto Main Street, and I think that invigorates our economy from the bottom up in a way that could realign our politics and our vision for growth of families and of dreams and of ambitions.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is a boon for anybody who's in the middle class. And again, Biden says that he's for the middle class, but he hasn't done anything to help those people out. It's Matt Gaetz. One last quick question, Matt. I think you'd be a great vice presidential candidate. I'm guessing you're not on the short list yet, maybe in the future. But who is it that Trump has to look at? I asked this question to my show yesterday. Is there a vice presidential candidate that could sway you toward Trump or away from Trump? And is that something you really have to consider? I always thought the vice president should be somebody who was ready to go if he or she was called on, but wasn't somebody who necessarily would be as big a personality as the president. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think whoever Trump picks for vice president is going to gain him or lose him a single vote. Okay. I think Trump is such a dominant force in politics. People are going to get on board with him or not based on him, right? And so then what is the importance of the vice presidency? Exactly what you said. Can they be president on day one? And I think that's how Trump views it. But there's something else I want to introduce you to. I think we need a vice president like John Adams, who will go over and preside over the Senate.
Right.
Because I don't really love the ideas I'm hearing for replacements for Mitch McConnell. And it's a relatively new construct that the Senate majority leader dictates the Senate calendar and determines what votes are going to occur when and when recess will occur. And I want a vice president that's going to say, hey, look, we're going to have Kash Patel as the head of the CIA. And if the senators say, oh, no, we don't really like that, we'd prefer someone more establishment or that won't really shake things up. Well, I want a vice president that says, very well, you're on recess for the next 180 days, and we're going to go do some recess appointments.
Wow.
So I think there's a way to have a vice president who understands the Senate, but isn't so enamored with its culture that they will be deferential to Senate leadership over the constitutional president of the Senate, who is the vice president. I think both Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance would fit that role exceptionally well.
I like both of them as well. It is Matt Gaetz. I know that you're on the road. You're out there getting it done. Appreciate you taking some time today, Matt. Let's do it again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, my man. We're back after this. Stay right here.